When you're a clone, you're never alone. Orphan Black, Season 1, and yeah, I'm not exactly being timely on this, but a friend of mine loaned me her DVD copy of the first season. I've watched it, I've enjoyed it, I plan to keep going, and you know what? I'm going to give my thoughts on it. Now, it's not my intention for this to be a spoiler-heavy kind of video, but I am going to be talking pretty freely about everything that I witnessed in the entirety of the first season, and some of it is going to be spoilers, so if that matters to you, you might want to go away right now. Before you do, I will say it's worth seeing, it's very good stuff, and I'm really intrigued about where it's going to go in the future. There, go see it. If you're still around, I'm assuming you're either caught up or you don't care. I suppose the main thing to say is just how well executed this thing is, because I knew it was about clones going in, even though honestly, as far as actual progression in terms of how much new information gets learned by the end of the season, there isn't a heck of a lot that you learn new. It's still really intriguing, and a lot of that comes down to the way the characters interact and how interesting they are to watch. Now, obviously, hat has to absolutely come off to Tatiana Maslany, who plays all the different clones, and she makes each of these characters so insanely distinct. I mean, not just in terms of voice, and she does flawless accents, but just everything about the personality. Like, you get instantly, you know who each of them are. They distinguish so wonderfully. That said, some of them work better than others. Obviously, we spend the most time with Sarah, and at present, she is my favorite one. But really, at least as far as this first season is concerned, she's designed to be. She's the one we spend the most time with. She's the ones we get to know the best. She's the one whose motivations we understand the most. So I definitely like her. Allison grew on me over time, and by the end, I did like her. Initially, I wasn't a huge fan of her just because her neuroses kept causing all these problems, and she seemed more like an obstacle than a character, but she's actually really layered, and I've grown to like her quite a bit. Cosima, I haven't really made a call on at this point. I think largely just because she's been primarily an exposition dump. And she's also tainted slightly by the fact that I don't really like what happened with her and Delphine. And yes, it's fine that it's a woman, and that's, you know, progressive and yay for all that. But the thing is, I think people would have been up in arms about how stupid it was and how quickly they fell for each other and how much that became a driving plot motivator for Cosima. If that had been a man, people would have said it was stupid and it belittled the character and all this other stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, you don't take the curse off that by making it a woman. You make it slightly more interesting, but it's still problematic for me. Yeah, I know, there's me crapping all over romantic subplots again. What can I say? It's what I do. Rachel Duncan gets introduced, don't know enough about her, can't make a call. That leaves me with Helena. Now, Helena, I actually do have problems with. I think she's got some issues in terms of how she's written. Again, the performance is stellar, but I think from a writing perspective, they made her too damaged. She's almost infantile, and like she doesn't seem to understand just how the world works. And I get that really does show just how damaged she is and how badly Tomas mistreated her, but she's so broken to the point that I can't imagine Tomas actually continuing to send her out in missions in the real world. I would think as soon as she's starting to question her mission, you stop sending her out, because she's obviously got this mind that's very malleable and very subject to influence. So that to me, first of all, makes her slightly less interesting in the first place, and it really makes less sense that she would ever get sent out into the world ever again. I think a much better balance would be a character like Alpha from Joss Whedon's show Dollhouse, who is a character who's very clearly damaged and broken and unhinged, but is together enough and cohesive enough in his brain workings to be legitimately dangerous. Helena is just, she's a little bit too feral, and that actually doesn't make her unpredictable. That makes her more predictable as far as I'm concerned. I want somebody that I can't quite pin down, because I can't quite figure out exactly how much of this is legitimate damage and how much of this is she knows what she's doing. But I feel like I've got her figured out, and she bores me a little bit. Pretty much all the rest of the supporting cast, though, is really spot on. Felix grew on me. He was another one I didn't care for off the bat, but his chemistry with all the other characters, I mean with Sarah especially, is just wonderful, so he works really well. Vic, I was surprised I didn't get annoyed by each time he kept showing up. He's just an energetic, fun performance, and it brings a nice thing to the proceedings. I really like Dr. Leakey, but I'm biased because I love Matt Frewer. He's one of my favorite actors. He's one of those guys who does not always always do good movies or good TV shows, but is always good in anything he does actually choose to do. I also really like Art, because Art is an archetype that I like, because he's the guy he's got no agenda. He's just trying to figure out what's going on, and he's just trying to make the best decisions based on what he knows. Yeah, it reminded me a little bit like of Davos from Game of Thrones. Just somebody who is just trying to be the best person they can be in a really messed up situation. And so I like that type of character, and he plays that very well. Paul, kind of up and down on. Again, there's the romance angle, but they're not banking on it too heavily with him, at least not yet. And performance is layered enough that I'm willing to accept him. I don't love him, but I can live with him. I'll tell you who didn't work, though. Olivier. I'm just going to chalk that up to miscasting. The guy just wasn't intimidating. He wasn't intriguing. He was just flat. He didn't work. As far as plot and the way the story unfolds, it's really impressive how intrigued and invested they got me, given that not all that much is different at the end of the season versus at the start. I mean, the characters know a little bit more about each other, but it doesn't feel like a full season worth of information has been learned by the end, but it's still oddly satisfying, and it never felt like wheels were spinning. It always felt like things were moving forward. And the show was, for the most part, pretty smart in its decisions in terms of what the characters did and how it got from situation to situation, and how it got out of a lot of situations that were like, boy, have they just written themselves into a corner with that? With things like Sarah pretending to be Beth, which really felt like something that they was gonna just put them in a corner really quickly, but I was surprised how well that kept continuing to pay really good dividends. So again, just really well executed on a lot of these ideas. That said, at the end, it did one thing specifically that I hated so much that I need to talk about it. And I'm trying to avoid nitpicks with this thing because there were little things across the show, but this just drove me crazy. When Kira left the house with Helena, that I could not believe they did that, because it just makes no sense based on what we know about Kira up to that point. Kira is shown to be a sharp kid. She recognized immediately when she saw a clone that wasn't her mother trying to pretend it was her mother, and she's been demonstrated in that very same episode as being a kid who tries to be a good kid. Yes, kids make mistakes every now and then, but she tries to be good and do the right thing by the people who are the authorities in her life. So the idea that she would open up to the door and then leave the house in the middle of the night while her mother is right there? No, I don't buy it. I don't believe it. It was a fundamental betrayal of everything I knew about that character up to that point. And then ultimately they're doing it just so they can get her hit by a car and then be like, ooh, there's something weird going on with Kira. It's like, there had to have been a better way to get us into that situation and to get us that information, because this was so contrived. It was one of those things that they broke a character in order to force a plot event, and it was so ham-fisted, completely uncharacteristic of almost everything else the show does, but it stuck out so badly I can't not talk about it because I hated that moment. I think that's my biggest complaint. Like I said, I've got nitpicky things, some of which as time has gone on I'm prepared to let go. Others I could go on about, but it doesn't seem worth it, because the show is still really interesting and, like I said, wonderfully performed by pretty much everybody involved. So I'm definitely going to keep with this series and hopefully catch up before season 4 starts airing. I don't know if I'll do more videos on season 2 or season 3 as I see them, but if I feel like it, I may come back depending on response to this one. But in any case, have you watched Orphan Black? What were your thoughts on the first season? Do me a favor and please don't drop a bunch of spoilers for the later 2 seasons in the comments. Don't be a jerk. But in any case, whatever your thoughts about the show in general and the first season in particular, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.